The original source was designed for that amount of pixels. That's words, right?
That's words. Okay. It's English.
Yeah. Then it's going to look distorted and weird.
All right, almost Dr. Castro. Why are speakers not getting any better when it comes to the audio information it's passing forward? You can't just obviously add more speakers into space and expect a better results, or can you?
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you think about it, right, the speaker is technically supposed to be an inversion of your eardrum, and so what better way to access the sense than reversing the sense to access it, which is basically how we got the microphone. The microphone is basically an inverted small speaker that you speak into and then reproduces it. Yeah, but if you, like for example, if you make the microphone bigger, it doesn't start capturing more sounds. It actually becomes worse because the sound wave that comes out of your mouth or whatever you're trying to pick up doesn't actually change size. But then the amount of material trying to capture it changes size. So you're actually having to move more mass back and forth in order to create that signal than you would if the microphone was super small, which is probably why it's a lot easier to have a really tiny microphone. But then if you have a really tiny speaker, then that doesn't work out either, right? So that's the thought was, you make a bigger speaker, it's much easier to create that bigger wave length, right? Most bass wavelengths are actually huge, right? They're actually like the lowest one's like 20 feet long from that periodic cycle. And so you need something that is like that big to be able to push it back and forth to be able to generate that wave, right? And so the thought was, if you have a big subwoofer, big woofers, big other things to handle all that, then the tweeter that's dealing with all the delicate frequencies would be able to handle all of them no problem and not have a big deal. We learned that there's issues with tweeters kind of inherently. The fact that it's trying to cover a huge amount of frequency bands all by itself. The fact that there's always a crossover when you get from each driver, so from the tweeter to the woofer to the bigger woofer to the subwoofer. There's issues in phase. There's all sorts of issues that come across when you try to basically counteract the initial deficiency of speakers, which is having too much mass to be able to push back and forth. That's not fast enough to be able to respond like our eardrums. And it's also not, or having too much mass. Not having enough mass or being too much mass has always been the problem with the speakers. So every speaker design has basically been compensating for one of those things. So then if you can't have a bigger speaker, could you have more speakers? You could have more speakers, but it would be akin to what happens if you try to upscale a 720p image to a 4K display. It's going to get all pixelated and messed out, because unless the original source was designed for that amount of pixels, that's words, right?
That's words. Okay. It's English.
Yeah. Then it's going to look distorted and weird, right? And that's the same thing with audio. You can put speakers all the way around a room, but they're going to start canceling each other. They're going to start hitting each other. They're going to start bouncing off each other, all the audio waves. And so you're going to have the situation where you think you'd have a better kind of experience, but it end up introducing so many more issues because now you're competing with all these sound waves by themselves.
And also, isn't it true that existing sound reproduction from speakers, right, is designed to engage one sense and one sense only?
That's right. They literally flip the eardrum on the other side in order to access the eardrum, and that's all that it'll be.
And as we've defined before, when it comes to the world of understanding audio and audio rate, there's other pathways to understand that information. So theoretically, if we've maxed out on the mechanism how to pass that information to one sense, being your ears, to have a better experience that engages your entire body, we're going to have to look at new forms of sound reproduction to be able to create that new world.
Yeah, or completely say, hey, if the speaker has kind of reached its end, what's a different way to be able to transmit vibrations to the human body? And maybe it's a different kind of speaker, or maybe it's something that's completely not a speaker at all whatsoever. And who knows? Maybe something's magic in there.
Cool. Shout out to the resonx. Awesome.